Right, in this video, we're going to look at the different careers that are associated within the field of drafting. So first off, we want to look at what exactly is a draftsman or a draftsperson. And this can be a complex job and it could have a lot of different parts or pieces to it depending on several different factors. Two of the most important factors would be what level is that draftsman working at, and then what field are they working in? Because one thing that we'll speak about and we'll see a lot in this course is that there's different areas of drafting, and based on what area you're working in is going to kind of greatly change how you use the software and the level of skills and what skills you might need. So as I mentioned, drafters are needed in lots of different areas. Two of the main areas that we kind of focus on are engineering and architecture. Those are kind of where we'll often branch lots of things off of. And a lot of these areas, such as manufacturing or industrial design, the fabrication, putting things together, and manuals and things like that, transportation, electrical, public utilities. We tend to think a lot of those as in the field of engineering. And then construction and architecture and public utilities, civil engineering, those things we kind of think as kind of a different separate branch. So you'll often hear me kind of refer to the two main areas of drafting. And we are going to have a pretty big focus towards the manufacturing and fabrication side within this course and the types of drawings that we do. Drafters are also needed in businesses, but also state and local governments need draftsmen. The armed services and military will have draftsmen, and then college and universities also need them as well. And one thing that some people tend to forget when they think of drafters and the different careers associated with them, teaching, it is also a career associated with drafting. So in all of those areas, though, there's typically going to be different levels that you can work on as a drafter. So you could be a drafter trainee. This is oftentimes also just an intern. And this is someone who just kind of assists with preparing drawings, finishing them off, and just different supportive tasks around an office. So it doesn't require a lot of education. So you can get a job as a trainee just from out of high school with maybe just some drafting classes associated with that while you were in high school. The trainee is not going to have a lot of creative say in projects. So they're typically going to be given the exact specifications of what needs to be done, or given something to, maybe it's an older object that we don't have drawings for, so they're given it to create the drawings for it, but they're not really going to have creative say when it comes to projects. From a trainee, you can move up to a junior drafter. So this still is, you're not going to have a lot of the creative say, but you do get a little bit more freedom when it comes to your work, and you're still going to be preparing drawings underneath someone. Typically, this is going to also require that you have either some high school experience drafting or at least an associate's degree in drafting, which is from a community college or a 2-year college experience. And then from the junior draftsman, you can work up to a drafting technician. So this then would be that you have that associate's degree, but you also have some experience working as a draftsman. So again, you're not maybe getting lots of creative freedom within projects, but you're getting a little bit more, and you have a little less supervision because you've been working within the field and you have that associate's degree. You're getting a little bit more freedom when it comes to the drawings that you prepare and having a say in some of the creative choices when it comes to the design. And then ultimately you could work up to a designer. So the designer is going to work with the engineers and the architects to turn concepts into usable production drawings. So, as a designer, you are coming up with sketches and ideas, and you are coming up in that conceptual process rather than just being handed the concept and being told to make technical drawings like you were at the other levels. So to become a designer, again, you'll need at least an associate's degree and then about 5 years of experience within a job. Now, a checker is considered the next step up when regarding like a pay grade. So a checker is someone who is an experienced drafter, and they will look over the drawings of those trainees and junior draftsmen and the designers to make sure that everything is accurate and complete, and either mark it up with a technique that's called redlining, which is where you take a red pen and you'll mark what's wrong, what needs to be fixed, or they'll go and make those fixes themselves. So typically that checker is going to have an associate's degree, and again, that experience, at least 5 years, and also just a lot of knowledge and kind of proven themselves that they really know the design process and the specific standards and techniques needed in drawings. And then one of kind of the highest levels of a job that you can have in the field of drafting is what we would call the engineer. So the engineer would have a 4-year degree or a bachelor's degree in an engineering specialty. In this case, I would be qualifying architecture as a specialty of engineering. An engineer is also licensed by a state, so different states have different requirements for their engineers or for their architects. But in order to call yourself an architect or to call yourself like a civil engineer or mechanical engineer, you do have to be licensed. So you can work in the field of architecture and you can help prepare drawings, but in order to call yourself an architect officially, you do need to have a license for it. There are lots of different specialized branches of engineering, and we'll look at some of them in this presentation. And lots of companies will have a team of engineers all kind of working in their own specialized areas on different projects. So to look at some of those branches, so first off, we'll have aerospace engineering. So aerospace engineers deal with aircrafts. So you'll see lots of aerospace engineers employed at NASA, and then also different public transportation, military applications. They'll have aerospace engineers around to help design their airplanes and their jets. Now, while aerospace engineers are dealing primarily with those aircrafts, they do need to have a lot of knowledge and background related to different systems such as the electrical systems, mechanical, structural, have a good background of physics and things like that in order to be a successful aerospace engineer. Now, architecture, well, I'll typically think of it as its kind of own separate area apart from engineering. I do see how it can fit into being a branch of engineering, but architecture is dealing with buildings, construction, structures for people to live in or be inside. To become a architect, you'll need a 4 or 5-year degree. In some states, you'll also need a master's degree, which is usually an additional 2 or 3 years, and then be licensed by the state. And there's different areas of architecture as well. So there's landscape architects who deal with designing layouts for outdoor spaces or designing gardens, things like that. There's city planners or urban planners who deal with kind of just laying out where different buildings and different types of buildings are going to go within a city, laying out streets and just regarding where different pipes and electrical grids are going to go in the city. There's interior designers, which don't design the structure of the building itself, but rather lay out the floor plan and pick out the color schemes and furniture within a building. And even then, most architects in the kind of simplest form of architecture of just designing the building itself, they'll typically kind of specialize in an area of architecture as well. So they'll maybe be just for residential architecture or commercial architecture, or even kind of have a focus towards maybe they just focus on tiny houses or they focus on sustainable housing, areas like that. So a lot of architects will kind of even have their own specialty of architecture. Civil engineers will design structures and different environmental systems on construction process. Similar to the other fields of engineering and architecture, it is going to require a 4-year degree and a license from the state to become a civil engineer. Electrical engineers focus on designing the grids and systems for electronics, kind of how it sounds. So they deal with designing those circuit systems and coming up with the graphics or kind of the communication of how everything is laid out so that way it can be given to the manufacturer to create the object. Again, this is going to require a 4-year degree at minimum. Mechanical engineers work with a lot of those other different systems with kind of a big focus on creative abilities. So they'll work on sketches from describing new products and ideas and creating those drawings for those products. A lot of times people will kind of use industrial design and mechanical engineering a little bit interchangeably. I tend to think of them as a little bit more separate, and I think of mechanical engineering as more of the technical know-how of how an object is built and created and manufactured, and industrial engineering as a little bit more of the creative side of things, but they can be used interchangeably. So for your next steps is you are going to select a career field, so one of those fields of engineering or architecture, or even if you want to find one online that I didn't list, you're more than welcome to. I would just recommend check with me beforehand via email. And you're just going to find some data related to that career and data related to both North Carolina as well as just the United States in general. So within this research you'll do based on a career, I would like you to find at a minimum just what the average salary of that field is, typical education, typical hours that are worked, whether it's hours a day or hours a week, typical personality traits that someone who works in that field has. So one thing that you'll kind of see in your research is they'll kind of recommend, what type of person does best in this job, because we all would generally like to have a job that suits who we are as a person. So, for example, mechanical engineers tend to be a little bit more creative. They like to problem solve. They like to take things apart, find out how they work. If it's something that just a job that suits your personality, you'll tend to do a little bit better at it and enjoy your work. Typical things that you would do in that job on a typical work day, softwares that are used. So a thing that I mentioned in the history of drafting presentation is just that we've now pivoted towards using computers to make our drawings. So just kind of what software do people use in that particular field. So while we are going to learn the software AutoCAD, one thing that you'll notice if you ever take the Drafting 2 courses that we offer at the school is that different areas of drafting have now kind of more specialized software for them. So what software may be specialized for that area, and then some just interesting facts that you might find about that career. Now, when it comes to how you are going to gather this information and present it, you can do this in just a paper or an essay. You could do it in a Google Slides presentation. If you wanted to just kind of compile it into notes and then record yourself giving it as just an oral presentation, that's fine. If you wanted to make a poster board and take a picture of that poster board and put it up on Canvas, again, that's fine. I'm not going to focus too heavily on just how you compile the information. It's more just what way are you most comfortable presenting to me that you researched a career and found out this pieces of information. So on Canvas, what you're going to do is just put your information in this little discussion post. So again, I just have all of that stuff listed right here. And just again, that you could do it in an essay, a poster board, Google Slides, if you wanted to just record yourself reading the slides or reading notes off a piece of paper, that's fine. It just has to have at minimum this, and then how you're going to submit. So whatever you choose to do, make sure that it's saved in your Google Drive and have your share settings in Google Drive set to anyone in Watauga Schools or anyone with the link. And so to do that, whenever you have your thing done, there'll be this share button in the top corner, and then you're just going to click on share, and then typically down here you can just change it to anyone with the link or anyone in Watauga Schools. I usually just do anyone with the link because it's easier. Additionally, you could right click on the object, share, and then you can change that setting in here. But just make sure that you have it set so that I can view it in Google Drive, and then the other students in the course can view it as well. So it needs to be set to one of these two settings. Copy and paste that link into the discussion reply box. And then make sure that you review the submissions that other people do and you reply to at least one other post. The rubric for how you'll be graded on your research can be found right here through this link. So it'll just kind of tell you that what I'm looking for and how many points are available in that area. So just make sure that you are requiring that you have all of the information that's listed in those bullet points, that you have everything presented in kind of a logical manner. So if you make a poster board or if you write a paper, that you kind of have it following some form of pattern that's easy for a person to kind of read through, that you have proper grammar in your paper or on your slides or in your oral presentation, that you have cited the sources that you gathered during your research. So these could be just a list of links at the end of the paper or a slide at the end of your presentation. If you do an oral presentation, you can either just make a quick sheet that has the links for your citations, or you can paste those links in your submission and that you've replied to a classmate's post. And that's how your work will be evaluated. So now is your turn to kind of go and pick one of these branches, or if there's one that you're interested in that maybe isn't listed here, feel free to go research that on your own as well and kind of compile a quick little research piece about it.